Hello, hello. Hope everybody is doing good. Today is Thursday, September 10th, and we are working on midpoint formula. Go ahead and take a couple of minutes to work through this warm-up. Now that you've completed this warm-up, we are going to start talking about the midpoint formula, being able to recognize coordinate pairs and use the midpoint formula to find midpoints of segments or find endpoints. The midpoint is halfway between two endpoints. So if you look at this diagram, we have point A, which is we're going to call x1, y1 because it's the first point. Point B, which is x2, y2, and we are trying to find halfway between those 2 points. So to find it, we're going to use this formula right here every single time. So we're going to take 0.1 of the x and of the y divided by 2 and the y point of the first point and the second point divided by 2, and that is going to be how we find our midpoint. Your midpoint should always have an x and a y, and it should always be determined as a coordinate point. So we're going to go through and do a few examples. This first one, you see that one endpoint is 4, 1. The other endpoint is 10, 5. We're looking for this point right here in the middle. So to do that, we are going to plug it into our formula. So again, remember we're using this formula where we're taking our 2 x's and dividing by 2, our 2 y's and dividing by 2. So I have listed our 2 points. We have the point 4, 1. We have the point 10, 5. We are connecting our x's. We are connecting our y's. So the first step is to put them into our formula. x1 plus x2 divided by 2, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. And now we simplify. So the next step would be to turn it into 14 because 10 plus 4 is 14, and 6 because 1 plus 5 is 6. And now we have found our midpoint, which is the 0.73, and recognize that we have a coordinate point, an x value and a y value. Okay, so here is another example. I'm actually going to see if you guys can do this one on your own. So pause the video really fast and find your answer, and then we'll get back on and work through it at the same time. Okay, so again, we have 2 points. We have -2, 1 and 4, 3. Our x points are -2 and 4. Our y points are 1 and 3. We are going to plug them in. So -2 plus 4 divided by 2, 1 plus 3 divided by 2. So 2 over 2, 4 over 2, and our midpoint is 1 and 2. Remember, it has to be that x and that y point together. Okay, so next thing you're going to work on is you are going to attempt to find the midpoint of each of these segments. Okay, make sure you are using some scratch paper as you go through and do this so that you actually can make less mistakes. Okay, so hopefully you guys did good on that one and that you're figuring out midpoints. We are going to do one example here where we're going to work backwards. So we are going to be given the midpoint and only one endpoint, and we're going to have to find the other endpoint. So we have C, we have M, right? Or sorry, we have C, we have M, we're looking for down here. Okay, we need to know what that is. And obviously, if it is graphed correctly on a coordinate plane, you're going to be able to count out your answer. However, sometimes the graphs are not accurate, and so you want to mathematically be able to go through and do that. So again, I'm going to remind us of what our formula says. Okay, we have to do this and this to be able to equal our midpoint y or our midpoint x. So that is how we're going to go through and solve this problem. Okay, so I am going to just go step by step. So we have no idea what this first point is that we're looking for. That is our unknown. Okay. This is point C, and this is point M, or midpoint. Okay. And then I've just gone through and listed them because this is our unknown. I'm calling it XY. We know the point C is negative 5, 7, and we know the midpoint is negative 2, 1. So now we're going to use that formula, x1 plus x2 divided by 2, but now we have to set it equal to the midpoint answer. So we don't have x, but we have negative 5. So x plus negative 5 divided by 2, because that's always our midpoint formula, has to be equal to the midpoint of negative 2. Same thing on this side, y plus 7 divided by 2 has to be equal to the midpoint of 1. And now we have two equations where we can work backwards and solve. So I am going to times this by 2 to get rid of it here, which then I do here. And that now gets me a negative 4 is equal to x plus negative 5. I'm going to times this side by 2 and this side by 2 to get rid of it here. And now I have y plus 7 is equal to 2. Okay. Now it just is a matter of adding 5. So x is equal to 1. And subtracting 7. So y is equal to negative 5. So that tells me my endpoint is here, so that if this is one endpoint, the other endpoint is this, we will get that midpoint. Now, I know that's a more difficult concept, and we will probably build on that at some point. But for today, you're just going to have to really, really focus on finding the midpoint of segments. Okay, so you guys should notice in your Google Classroom that there is a assignment that is a quizzes assignment for you. It should say something about midpoint formula. You're going to go through and complete that. Make sure you remember that in order to get a passing grade and have this count as an assignment, you need to get a 70% on it. That might mean you have to try it more than one time. What I really want to emphasize is that you're putting your time and effort in. You have plenty of time to do this. Please make sure you're using scratch paper, because if you're not using scratch paper, you're going to be making small mistakes. And please make sure that this is completed by the end of the period. If you're struggling to get it done by the end of the period, definitely by the end of the day. I hope you guys are doing good, and I will see you soon.